some other things. Okay, that's right, nice, I love it. So, good morning, and welcome to our daily briefing. Our deep dive topic for today is going to be really two things. We're going to touch briefly on enforcement. We're also going to touch on another emergency order that I need to sign. It doesn't really have anything new in it, but legally we need to get that done. But our big topic is early childhood. And so we're joined by some guests here that we're going to introduce and talk about basically early childhood development, as well as what we're doing with respect to our during the day programs for older kids, so that our first responders and others can continue to be essential workers. So that's going to be our deep dive topics for today. We also have a number of items from central New Mexico, so I'm going to dive into some of those. But firstly, I just want to mention that for a lot of folks in New Mexico, of course, this goes way back for us. This is Holy Week. Of course, for my interfaith family, it's also Passover. So busy religious times. But, you know, today's Good Friday. I want to wish everyone the best on Good Friday. I know right now, literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Mexicans and Puerqueños would be out at Tomé or Chimayo or in our respective churches. And so we know that at this time, right, of course, all of those events are unfortunately canceled, but for a very good reason. For essentially a higher calling for public health for each other, which I know in many ways is still in that same spirit. So I want to remind folks, again, there are check-in with your respective church or entity, that your faith-based entity, to find out what they are doing. I know we're posting a message from our Archbishop on social media, and they're going to be doing streaming primarily of services, so you'll be able to do that from your home. And also, I know there's that awesome sunrise service that Calvary puts on that about 20,000 people go to at UNM each year. They're now going to have a sort of metered RSVP'd drive-up program at their facility. And so, again, just want to appreciate all our faith leaders for their patience during these times and their flexibility, and for their faith in this public health order, and for in the concept of staying at home, and also, of course, in still finding ways as best we can to celebrate our religious holidays in ways that also keep us safe. So for more information on that, again, you can check out online. There's going to be lots of information shared on both of those programs. So also, I want to make sure, too, that we give some additional shout-outs to our Senior Affairs Department that continues to feed. I think the last number I saw was like 35,000 meals or something that they've shared with our seniors. And so thanks so much for everybody who does that. A reminder, that doesn't happen on the weekend, so on Fridays they're extra busy. And, of course, during Holy Week especially. So, okay, with that, let's go into some of our updates from around central New Mexico. First, a little bit about enforcement. We continue to enforce in cooperation in conjunction with the state police, and that is a daily tactical operation that we do. Again, APD's focus right now is really on taking calls and on crime fighting. That, of course, was a challenge due to our low staffing levels, has been for years, is no different now. So we're really trying to prioritize our officers actually taking calls and going out for those purposes. However, when we see egregious situations, obviously, we're going to do things like cite businesses and so forth. And tactically, we're working with the state police in terms of roving checks and so forth. So that's going to continue over the course of the weekend. By way of update, I do want to mention that, at least from the city side, we're also coordinating with our fire marshal and our environmental health department on these public health order enforcement issues. And so in total, we've done business education for 360 different businesses, and we have issued a non-compliant notice to 171 businesses, and a second non-compliance to 3. And then, of course, we actually have cited 1 business to date. Now, again, that's the city departments. Some statistics there. We're going to be offering statistics twice a week on Mondays and on Thursdays on enforcement. So we'll update you more on that next week. I want to mention that complaints are taken from 242 cops, 311, and the fire marshal's office, and the state police. And again, we're coordinating with them on that. I do want to highlight a few other components with respect to enforcement. Number one, I want to note that the biggest issue by far has been smoke shops. And so we're going to work with the state police over the weekend on smoke shops that should not be operating. We've also, that's 23 complaints about smoke shops. We've had 11 complaints about massage parlors. And interestingly, furniture stores, we had major issues with furniture stores. Furniture stores are not essential services. And so one chain, even Conn's, had all their facilities open. I believe those are now closed. If you see them open, give us a ring. But I think we finally connected up with corporate to do that. So by and large, those were sort of the biggest categories. Everyone else, other than that, is actually doing a really good job. And so believe it or not, out of the thousands of businesses in our town, this isn't a lot of complaints and not a lot of enforcement issues other than those ones that I mentioned. Last two that I want to just mention is car washes. And I know spring is famous in our community for its whether it's all the leaves and everything flying around, that everyone's washing their cars, it's warmer out, etc. I would just say that's a great thing to do in your driveway, the old-fashioned way. Our car wash folks are not essential businesses, and so we have gotten a fair amount of complaints about that as well. Okay, now moving on a little bit, we also, I believe this pretty much just came out, but the Human Services Department of the state is now providing $35 million for state hospitals during Corona times. Want to direct people to the Department of Human Services and the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Scrace, for details on that. And again, that just came out, some very encouraging news and relief for our hospitals coming from the state. So we appreciate that very much. Of course, being Albuquerque, that's where a large amount of those hospitals are, so that's going to really help Albuquerque a lot as well. Now, a few other things to mention. Our Open Space Division is also teaming up with APD to help educate users of open space during this time of public health. We talked about this last Friday a lot, and last weekend actually folks did a pretty good job out in our open space maintaining social distance. Want to remind folks we do have an open space unit that's going to be watching for that. We're also going to be looking at illegally parked vehicles. We know that some of the parking lots are crowded. Just find a legal place to park, like down the street, and walk, and just pay attention. Those no parking signs, they're there for lots of reasons, whether it's people's houses or whether it's has to do with ingress and egress for fire trucks, which because of forest fires, especially in the Bosque and the foothills, are very real this time of year. We do need to follow the parking regulations at our open space sites and on the streets, the side streets near them. Illegally parked vehicles will be cited and towed, as they always are. There is nothing different right now with respect to that. Also, the state has recently launched a website back on the business front for manufacturers, innovators, and suppliers to submit how they might be able to assist to meet the needs of medical supplies that are needed in our state right now. And I want to just share that website if folks haven't heard it. It's nmcovid19.org. If your business might be able to provide something that's helpful with respect to all these things that are in demand, please go through that website. That helps us stay organized. I want to mention also tomorrow, Presbyterian's Balloon Fiesta testing site is going to be open on Saturday. It was closed last week, but we're fortunate this week it is going to be open on Saturday. Their hours are going to be 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Balloon Fiesta for your drive-up testing. Our Civic Engagement Office has been establishing a relationship with Corona Care NM, and this is a group that put together UNM students to provide childcare to essential workers. This is a really special thing that these students are doing, and our team is now synced up with them so that if you go to either the City of Albuquerque website and click on volunteers, or you go through the UNM portal, both of those are going to be aligned so that we can get essential medical personnel who need childcare. We can connect them with UNM students. That's what this is all about, and that's a good segue to the other childcare issues that we're going to be talking about very shortly. I also want to mention that in general, our civic engagement team continues to connect volunteers to those who need them, whether it's for childcare or other activities. So I want to encourage folks, if you want to find a way to do that, that is again socially appropriate given the distancing guidelines and so forth, just go to City of Albuquerque, type in volunteers, and you can see a very good portal to connect you with the different kinds of ways that you can help. A few items with respect to the economy as well. Want to remind everyone that the federal grant money for payroll protection, the PPA applications, we mentioned this a couple of days ago. If your bank is telling you no, try another local bank, whether it's a credit union or some of our community banks. Some of them are still processing applications, and of course, that's just the first step that gets you in the line for this long federal queue, and there's a lot of challenges with that we've been hearing about in national media. But I want to let you know that if your bank tells you no, try another bank, because I have heard from at least 2 here in Albuquerque, major ones that are still definitely processing those applications. And again, credit unions and community banks, great place to look for that. Also, yesterday, I know we announced that we have drive-up Wi-Fi available at multiple locations around the city, especially for children and seniors. I do want to mention that there are lots of programs. If you do have the wiring already at your house, there are some other qualifications, but Comcast, for example, is giving 2 months of free wireless or free internet. And so also check with a cable provider or internet provider and see if you might be able to qualify for that. Again, that is going to be a better alternative than drive-up Wi-Fi. Drive-up Wi-Fi is for the folks who don't qualify for those great programs that Comcast and others are offering. Now, at this time, let me transition a little bit to this notion of childcare in our city right now. Basically, what we're trying to do at the City of Albuquerque is hold up childcare as part of an essential service for those who are most vulnerable and those most in need. We've been doing this in one primary way, and that's been at almost every one of our community centers that's been open. We've been able to provide childcare for essential workers, for first responders, for healthcare workers, bus drivers, our waste collection drivers, community center staff, our 311 team. Anyone who needs it basically has been able to drop their kids off at our community centers. And to date, we're averaging about 550 kids running through this program. And again, there's some screening and so forth that happens. We're reminding folks that's only if you're an essential worker that has no other alternative for your children. And that program so far has been working quite well. There is a little bit of extra capacity, but not a lot, so we need people to continue to respect that. And we're going to hear more about that in a moment. The challenge has been, what do we do? Those programs are for kids basically 6 years and older. And we know that a lot of private daycare folks who deal with children who are, from just a couple of months all the way up to age 6, so this is our sort of early childhood development window. We know there are some open, we know there are lots that are not. And we also know that all of our essential workers and folks in need might have children of that age. And so we're trying to do our best to support them as well. And so today we're going to share that we're going to start by opening one of our early childhood centers, perhaps 2, to be able to do that critical window of 0 to 6. And I know for a lot of folks too, we use extended family a lot in our community for this. We're sort of famous for this. It's one of the great things about our city. But of course, the challenges around grandparents right now are very real. I know even for our family. So this is something that we're going to try and do to, again, help as we face this surge for healthcare workers and so forth, to be able to do something for the kids under 5. So to talk more about both these issues, let's start with the Director of Family and Community Services, Carol Pierce. Carol?
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Our team at the community centers, over 20 community centers, have been providing youth programming for youth 6 and above, and they've been really having the fun spirit, positive youth development that our community centers are known for. We follow best practices by cleaning those facilities every 2 hours in the high use areas. And also we screen our staff that are serving those students every time that they come in. As the mayor mentioned, we've served over 500 of those youth for people that really have to be at work, and we are delighted to do that. There is a little more room. And if people would like to register, they can go to play.cabq.gov to go to our registration process. I do want to say, in the spirit of our community centers, just to give an example of what kind of fun they're having, they had a contest on hand washing to do TikToks. And so I think the next time the mayor will be announcing who the winner of that contest was, but they've had a lot of fun to really demonstrate how to wash the hands to different songs for the required amount of time. So we really think that's a great example of the kind of spirit and the fun that our youth are having in these times that we're at. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. We've all been having fun with hand washing. I have rediscovered one of my favorite bands, Clutch, that has some great tunes to hand wash too. Animal Farm is my favorite recommendation there. Anyway, more on our childcare for essential workers. Shauna Runk, why don't you come up? She's our division manager for child and family development. Shauna.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your continuing dedication to children and families in Albuquerque. So as Mayor Keller shared, we are going to be opening up one of our child development centers beginning next week. We will open up additional locations just as needed based on the demands of the community. A couple things to keep in mind. This particular center, we're starting with children ages 3 to 5, so it's more preschool aged children at this point at our Herman Sanchez location. That's the one we're planning on opening. We have also worked with licensing to develop a very simplified application process that we can do online or via email. So we wanted to make sure everything was as smooth and as easy for families as possible. Folks who are interested can contact our enrollment office at 767-6504. And they can just walk families through that process as well. As with the community centers, we will be implementing additional safety measures for the safety of the families and the children and the staff. So obviously disinfecting on a regular basis, continuous hand washing, so maybe we can get together and learn a little bit, some different songs. We kind of go with the ABCs in early childhood, but I'm sure we can expand our repertoire. And additional outside time for children and some other practices that are recommended both by CYFD and the Department of Health, just to make sure everybody is safe. We are limiting class sizes to 5 children and no more than 4 adults. To stay underneath that recommendation of 10 per classroom. So the good thing is there's a lot of one-on-one attention for all the kids, so this is wonderful. So we will experiment and open up new centers as needed. But I do want to take a minute and share that, you know, before the COVID-19 pandemic and after, our 25 child development centers do serve almost 800 children and families every day. And so we have not forgotten about those families. Our teachers are doing some amazing things, continuing to outreach and engage families during this time. And so just like everybody else, we've had to be really creative and develop some remote type of skills and outreach, but we have some amazing things going on. I want to recognize a couple of our staff that are really going above and beyond. We have our teacher, Kim, who's at our MacArthur site. Her and her team have been going out and visiting their students at home, obviously keeping those social distancing recommendations, but delivering some enrichment activities for families, which is great. The kids are super excited to see their teachers. We have teacher Roberto at our La Luz site, who is videotaping lessons and activities for families. And actually, we've been approached by PBS to partner and continue with those efforts, videotaping, especially for our pre-K students. So that's great news that's happening. We have teacher Diane at our Western Trail site, who was interacting with a family the other day, and the little girl shared that she wanted to see her friends because she missed her friends. And so they were able to take the iPad and kind of go along the classroom and show the different pictures of her friends and the different learning areas and make that connection with the classroom even when children are at home. We're also making sure that we're providing support for families on a social emotional level. This is a difficult time for us all, and providing support for our families on how to talk to children about things that are happening in our world right now in a very developmentally appropriate way. So I'd just like to thank all of our teachers who are really working hard to continue to engage our children and families and make sure that everything is ready and those relationships are maintained for when we return back. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, thank you so much. And again, I want to emphasize how grateful we are to the teachers who are doing this work right now, and also the ones that are stepping up to help open this additional center. And want to remind everyone, this is a completely voluntary program for city employees, obviously. So this is teachers who want to provide this service as part of what they're doing. And also a good reminder too, we often forget about it, but our city of Albuquerque is one of the largest providers, if not the largest provider, of early childhood care in the entire state. And so it's an issue that has come up in a number of venues from the state support and things that are happening for early childhood. And we like to remind folks that our city we're grateful that Shauna and her team, they're role models in many ways, even for other cities. When I explain to other mayors, even from bigger cities, the number of children that we take care of each day, they are blown away at our city. And that's one area, our city, for early childhood development and for our seniors. Albuquerque is one of the best in the country, toe-to-toe with even major cities. And so that's something we're very proud of and we're reminded of in these difficult times as well. Okay, a few other items that we need to cover here. First, let's see, we need to do another declaration of an emergency. This might sound like a big deal. It's always a big deal, but because this is happening all the time now, it feels like it's not that big of a deal. This actually just provides us the legal sort of definitions to do a couple of things that basically we've already announced or talked about. But just to paraphrase, this is going to provide public notice for our third declaration of emergency. This is going to extend cancellation of non-essential City of Albuquerque gatherings through May 15th. And again, this just gives us a little buffer with respect to city programs and projects. And again, we'll see what the state does, but we already know the whole state is as of May 1 anyway. But for us, we know because of our density and so forth, at least this is city-run programs, not privately run programs. The city ones, we're going to go ahead and hold off till May 15th. We couldn't really execute on those anyway at this point because of the planning and staffing that would be required. Also, like the state order, this does have some regulations around grocery stores. Again, there's nothing that's different here. It just mandates hand washing, regular disinfecting of services, curbside delivery if possible, and designating a staff monitor for capacity. This has been one issue we've seen at Albuquerque stores where the stores will say, we know we're in violation, what do we do? And the short story is we're requiring them to have one person whose job it is to actually count the metering, the 20% of capacity. And so this is going to help us enforce the state order. And so, and implement these exclusive hours as well. So each store is going to have to designate a point person to work with our environmental health team to make sure that we can smoothly implement those instead of folks just being like, well, we want to know what to do, but we don't know who's in charge. We're forcing them to have somebody at each store to do that. And it's a reminder, of course, this is about saving lives. These changes that, again, just mirror what the state's doing, but will enable better enforcement. This, hopefully, literally will keep a couple of people at a minimum from passing away and lots of people from getting very sick. Now, also, this does accelerate the timeline for construction projects. We mentioned this, I think, early in the week about how we're continuing to move up construction projects. So this helps us with respect to timelines for things like the different periods of notice and appeal and things like this. It just shortens them. It also increases some of the thresholds for the on-call contractors and so forth. So again, these are things we've already announced, but now we'll be able to follow through with from a legal perspective. Okay, I also want to mention this does help clarify some of the definitions from the New Mexico Department of Health that now we can use in our own emergency declaration with respect to the city not issuing permits for businesses that are trying to change what they are. So another trick that people have been using, an end around of the process in Albuquerque, are smoke shops trying to say they're a grocery store, people putting some CBD oil on the counter and saying now it's medical marijuana. This now clarifies that none of those are permissible, and it also means that the city will not be issuing those permits. So those stores can now be forcibly penalized and closed. So just tightening up that loophole. So I'm going to go ahead and sign this right here. And with that, we're going to switch to our question and answer session. And want to mention takeout yesterday was Coda Bakery. So glad they're still open. And I could use a little help. What date is today? I mean, it's like we're all losing track. The 10th. Okay, got it. All right, so there's our public notice of signature. And pulled up the cover page too, just to make sure everyone. So we're following all the rules here. So, okay, so now we are able to proceed with all of these items. All right, so with that, we are available for questions. Thank you.
I just have
Uh-huh.
two quick ones. You stated Herman Sanchez, right? Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then.
South Broadway, right? Is that the one? It's kind of in the South Broadway.
Southeast, yes.
Yeah.
Southeast, okay. That's the only location? No? Okay.
For right now, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we're gonna start with, correct.
And then, the question that was sent, are there any updates from the city, concerning how they're handling COVID-19 with, Levita, the cases there?
So the question is some updates around nursing homes, especially Lividiana. And we've been working closely with the Department of Health on this. We know that the testing is continuing now at their facilities, as well as they have a couple of facilities in town, as well as the Beehive facility, which I think is a related corporate entity, which might have some similar staff sharing. So our Department of Health has been working with DOH on that. So I think we're on a good path to finish out all the testing there. And also the state did announce, and the city is very supportive of this, and an area where we're going to start having a location for people in nursing homes where they can go if they've tested positive. And so that separate facility is currently in the works to being set up. I would direct specific questions on that to the state because I want to make sure that I'm not getting ahead of them with respect to what I'm sharing. But we're working with the state to do that. That's going to be a very good thing. A lot of other states are doing this, and we've got to do it right here in Albuquerque, so we're working on that.
I think just bouncing off that, I mean, you said that you are talking with the governor every day about various issues. And so I know you said that the city is supporting, these changes with nursing homes and making room. So was this stuff that you have discussed with the governor as far as like moving some of the residents out and putting, some of the patients who have COVID-19 into, these other facilities? Was that a topic that you discussed with the governor?
Yes, so lots of things that are happening right now. We are in communication with the state at like almost every level. So whether it's mid-level health folks talking to our health folks, and as is the case when you're Albuquerque and you're just the largest metropolitan area for about 1,000 square miles. Whenever there's an idea or a order that comes down from the state, we really work in touch with like, okay, how can that be implemented? Because the bottom line is if we're not aligned, like almost everything is unenforceable. And so that's where we've been able to really do a good job staying aligned. And this is a good situation where, we first found the challenges at Lividiana. They were able to get testing in right away, which is great. We helped with some of the security issues and also some of the public notices. Now we're working anytime there's a new facility, like even the Loveless facility that the Army Corps of Engineers is constructing. The city has to be part of all the inspections that are involved in that, all the permitting, and many times a lot of the traffic and ingress and egress. So those are the kinds of things that we make sure that we're able to deliver on a lot of that. And when we're not, we also say, okay, we need to tweak a few things. So for example, if we have questions around, these businesses that are trying to get around orders, and the state has been very helpful clarifying that, and then, we codify it on our end so that we can enforce things using our own ordinances. So in the nursing home situation too, we've been able to also reach out to all these other nursing homes, right? Albuquerque is also the capital of nursing homes for the state of New Mexico. So we have 150 plus, and we've now this week been able to be in touch with all of them, and we've issued new standards and guidelines. And now by setting up this additional facility, we're trying to be ahead of the curve. And the state's done a great job of this, and I think the city has done a good job of this, so that once they're in the larger nursing homes, they're able to separate populations. But in smaller ones, they're not. And so now we have this third space available. So it's the same methodology that we're using for whether it's our homeless population or for healthcare workers. The state's taking the lead on a couple of sites we're supporting, and then we have backup sites that we're ready to prop up if we need to as ourselves, just as the city.
We also specifically about the Canyon Nursing Home in the Northeast, moving residents out of that facility and putting COVID-19 patients in. I was just there this morning, and there are some families who are upset with this. I mean, what would you say to those families who are having residents being moved out of that and other patients that are COVID-19 being put in those facilities?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing is I would really have communication with the Department of Health. There are HIPAA regulations with respect to, especially with families, right, because they actually know the individual and so forth. So we certainly don't want to speak to any specific family situation. So they really need to work with the Department of Health on that. But I think the department has done a great job of essentially understanding, like, the most important thing is to protect the safety and the public health of those individuals and the family and the people around them. And I know the health department works through that on a case-by-case basis. So each individual family has a different impact depending on the situation. And again, because it's so specific, that's something that really is just between them and the Department of Health. All right, well, okay, I think we're going to wrap it up with questions. And also, just speaking to the Department of Health, want to thank our Department of Health Secretary. I mean, so many people doing a lot of good work, but one of them is definitely Secretary Kunkel. So we're grateful to have her in this position at the state during this time. And I want to wish everyone a very happy Easter and a blessed Good Friday. And want everyone to make sure, and again, stay safe and stay publicly distanced and so forth during these times. But also try and enjoy it. I know with little kids, one thing that works great in the house or even in the front yard is an Easter egg hunt. So this is going to be, an Easter that my kids probably won't think is any different than other Easters. And so that's a good thing we're looking forward to. Okay, we're not going to have a briefing tomorrow. In general, we're trying not to have them on the weekends, especially to give staff and media a little bit of a break. But we will be back Monday unless there's something major that happens. Thanks so much. Thank you. I think I got it right. Yeah. All right.